somehow me going to talk to him about something is going to be a wake-up call.
What started as whispers behind closed doors has now become one of the biggest reality TV scandals to ever hit Huntsville. The same man who once stood proudly beside his wife on camera, building homes and preaching loyalty, is now sitting behind bars. And the woman who many underestimated, his wife, LaTisha Scott, has just pulled off the biggest win of her life. What nobody saw coming was how deep this story really went, or how far Marsau's secret life had stretched before it all came crashing down.
I say, see my favorite on the show? Go find her then. Shit, where's Tisha at? Tisha getting pampered. Yesterday was her birthday.
Let me check my goddamn
Right, because I know I got a private investigator following her little cheating ass. So I'm gonna find out, because she wanna. Tisha ain't the kind of person that be sitting there taking that shit. She wanna just get back. She wanna cheat back. So I gotta watch her.
But here's where it gets emotional. This isn't just a story about a husband going to jail. It's a story about a woman who spent years being told she didn't know enough, wasn't strong enough, and couldn't stand on her own. And yet, she did exactly that. LaTisha turned pain into power, and the world finally saw her strength when the truth came out in court. For so long, Marsau Scott was known as the confident businessman on Love and Marriage, Huntsville, the man who always had an opinion, always had control, and always seemed one step ahead.
I mentioned depression, and people are talking about, oh my God, it's a bad problem running rampant. And here's the reason why it's running rampant, right? It's because we don't know what it really is.
He ran his construction business with pride, often bragging about his success and influence in Huntsville. But behind that confident smile, something darker was brewing. LaTisha stood by his side for years, defending him against every rumor, every blog headline, and every co-star who hinted at trouble behind their marriage. She believed in her husband because that's what she'd been taught to do: stand by your man, no matter what. But what happens when that loyalty becomes your biggest heartbreak? It all started with small signs, late nights at the office, missing money from joint accounts, business documents she didn't remember signing. At first, LaTisha brushed it off.
I started having people come to me. It was like, well, we've been offered money to come on the show and said we slept with your husband. I was like, oh my God. Like, this
Are you serious?
Yeah, yeah. I was like, this is crazy. Like, people are really offering you money to come on this show and lie. So at that point, I was like, forget it. It's a lie. Like, now I don't believe.
Marsau always had an explanation, and his charm made it easy to believe him. But the more questions she asked, the more things didn't add up. When she finally began to look closer, she realized the truth was far worse than she could have imagined. Marsau hadn't just been hiding money, he had been running entire companies behind her back, using her name to secure contracts and loans without her consent. What made it worse was that these weren't just minor mistakes, they were deliberate moves designed to keep her in the dark while he built a separate empire under her signature.
Part of the harassing communications was you sending the picture.
No.
Right.
No, it wasn't.
Okay, that's the question I gotta ask. The question is, how do you feel about that? That makes me lose respect for Marcus.
If it was true.
If it was true, yeah. I didn't
So
say
now
it was
that
true.
he's saying
I
it
assumed it
wasn't-
was true.
You assumed it was?
Now that he's saying that it's not true, how do you feel about it?
I don't know if I would believe Marcel.
The turning point came when LaTisha's lawyer showed her a stack of documents that included her forged signature. Contracts, bank statements, tax filings, every single one had her name, but none of them had her approval. That was the day she decided to fight back. And from that moment, the woman many thought would never stand up to her husband became unstoppable. Marsau thought he could outsmart everyone. He thought LaTisha would never challenge him, that she'd stay quiet like she always had. But he underestimated her heart. When the lawsuit hit, it sent shockwaves through their family, their business, and the entire Love and Marriage, Huntsville community. This wasn't just about a breakup, it was about betrayal, money, and justice. During the court proceedings, LaTisha's legal team laid out a timeline that exposed years of deceit. They revealed hidden accounts, forged signatures, and fake business filings tied to Marsau's construction company. The evidence was so detailed that even his own brother, Maurice, couldn't stay silent. When he took the stand against Marsau, the courtroom went silent. It was the moment everyone realized that family loyalty had limits. Maurice's testimony confirmed what many had suspected: Marsau had been keeping double financial records, one for investors and one that showed where the real money was going. And none of that money was being shared with LaTisha. It was a devastating blow, not just legally but emotionally. The biggest shock came when Marsau's former assistant walked into court. Dressed in black and hiding behind sunglasses, she carried a flash drive that changed everything. On it were recordings, wire transfers, and deleted emails proving that Marsau had been moving money through shell companies registered under fake names. One recording captured Marsau saying, "As long as it doesn't have my name or Tisha's, we're good." That line became the nail in his coffin. LaTisha sat in the courtroom hearing her husband's voice proof that he had used her name, her trust, and her loyalty for his own gain. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just sat still, with a calm that only comes from someone who has already been broken and rebuilt herself. And then came her turn to speak. LaTisha took the stand with every ounce of dignity she had left. She looked at the judge, then at her husband, and said, "I believed in him more than I believed in myself." Her voice didn't shake, but you could hear the pain underneath every word. She explained how she'd spent months quietly collecting evidence, bank receipts, emails, and even recordings from their home office. She'd built her own case from scratch while Marsau thought she was still in the dark. When she presented the hard drive full of proof, the courtroom gasped. It showed how Marsau had transferred hundreds of thousands of dollars through hidden companies, even applying for business loans in her name. The judge ordered an immediate audit, and within days, federal investigators were involved. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. When a former producer from LAMH, Huntsville testified, the case turned from personal to federal. She claimed Marsau had pressured production to edit out scenes where he mentioned fake employees and questionable financial moves. Those cut scenes lined up perfectly with the money trail uncovered by LaTisha's team. That was when the federal investigator stepped in, handing a sealed envelope to the judge. Hours later, Marsau's accounts were frozen, and his assets were seized. When the ruling came down, Marsau Scott was found guilty of fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. He was taken into custody right there in the courtroom. For LaTisha, that moment wasn't about revenge, it was about freedom. She had spent years living in the shadow of a man who made her doubt her own instincts. But now, the entire world saw her strength. The same woman who was once called naive and submissive was now standing victorious, not just as a wife, but as a woman who refused to be silenced. After Marsau's arrest, the reaction across social media exploded. Some fans were shocked, others said they saw it coming. Cast members from LAMH, Huntsville shared cryptic posts, some expressing support for LaTisha, others staying suspiciously quiet. Kimmy and Maurice were reportedly torn, caught between family loyalty and the truth that had finally come out. Meanwhile, LaTisha didn't make a big media statement. She simply posted one quote on her Instagram story that read, "God fights battles you didn't even know were being planned." That post went viral in minutes. Behind the scenes, life for LaTisha changed overnight. The woman who once relied on her husband's guidance now had control of her own company. She rebranded her real estate business, took full ownership of the projects they once shared, and began speaking publicly about financial independence and empowerment. But let's not pretend the victory came without pain. Friends say LaTisha had moments of deep sadness, grieving not just the marriage she lost, but the man she thought she knew. Her children had to face questions no child should ever hear. She had to rebuild everything from the ground up, emotionally and financially. Still, she did it. Bit by bit, she started standing taller. Interviews began to roll in, with hosts calling her an example of resilience. But when asked if she'd ever take Marsau back after his release, her answer was simple: "I forgive him, but I can't forget what I lived through." Those words struck a chord with women everywhere who had ever been betrayed by someone they trusted. LaTisha wasn't just telling her story, she was giving voice to every woman who had been dismissed or ignored. As for Marsau, his world grew smaller by the day. Sources say he's currently serving time while appealing his conviction. His businesses have collapsed, his reputation in ruins. And for someone who prided himself on control, losing everything might be his biggest punishment of all. But there's another layer to this story that most people don't talk about: the emotional aftermath. LaTisha had to learn how to live without the man who had been part of every major chapter of her life. For years, she measured her worth through his approval. Now, she measures it through her peace. And that's what makes this story powerful. It's not just about legal wins or financial justice, it's about emotional liberation. LaTisha Scott proved that even when the world tells you to stay quiet, you can rewrite your own story. The women who once watched her on Love and Marriage, Huntsville, and judged her for being too loyal are now calling her an inspiration. The irony is, her loyalty didn't make her weak, it gave her the patience to gather strength in silence until the moment came to stand tall. But let's be honest, the downfall of Marsau Scott sends a message that goes beyond reality TV. It's a warning to every man who hides behind charm and business suits, thinking he's untouchable. Because eventually, truth finds a way to surface. And when it does, it doesn't knock, it kicks the door down. Now, years from now, people might forget the business deals or the courtroom drama, but they won't forget the image of LaTisha walking out of that courthouse. No makeup, no tears, just a quiet confidence that said, "I won." And maybe that's the most poetic ending of all. A woman who once had to fight to be heard now doesn't have to say a word. Her strength speaks for itself. But what nobody expected was how this victory would change her forever. Friends close to her say she's no longer chasing fame or validation. She's focused on her children, her peace, and building a legacy that doesn't depend on anyone else's name. It's the kind of growth that doesn't make headlines but makes history. Because when a woman like LaTisha rises, she doesn't just rise for herself, she rises for every woman who ever thought she couldn't. So maybe this isn't just the end of Marsau's story, it's the beginning of hers. And as the cameras roll on the next season of Love and Marriage, Huntsville, one thing's for sure, LaTisha Scott isn't playing the same role anymore. She's not the background character or the silent wife. She's the headline, the voice, and the example of what happens when strength meets truth. Her story reminds us that sometimes the biggest wins don't happen in boardrooms or on TV, they happen in the quiet moments when you choose yourself over someone who betrayed you. And as for Marsau, sitting in that cold cell, maybe now he finally realizes what real loss feels like. Because in the end, it wasn't just money or fame he lost, it was the one woman who would have done anything for him. LaTisha's win isn't about revenge, it's about redemption. It's about reclaiming her story, her peace, and her power. So now, as the dust settles and the headlines fade, the message is clear: never underestimate the quiet ones. Because when they finally speak, the whole world listens.